Now let's work on registration, and there's going to be three parts to this. There's going to be the user interface part, which is going to be this loadable content with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And that's going to handle the user interaction and use AJAX to talk to the web server. And then on the web server side, there's going to be a user class that has the business logic that wraps the logic about dealing with a user and what methods there are for users. And then there's going to be a data layer, which is basically going to be a wrapper around the database. So the user object is going to talk to the database object, and the database object will actually fetch and store the data. And then that way you can change the database object without having to change the user object. You can change the user object without having to change the user interface. You can change the user interface without having to change the user or the database and so on. So it gives you more flexibility in terms of organization. And that's a three-tier architecture. So what we're going to do is start with the user interface part. So we already have a register content dialog, and let's start fleshing that out. We're going to put the whole thing inside of a div box, and this is fine. So I'll go ahead and just change the stub part. And what I'm going to have in terms of the content is I'm going to have a place to write error and status messages. And then I'm going to have the actual form itself. Actually, let me put a paragraph of text here that tells the user what to do. That's usually a good thing to do. And I'll put an ID on this too so I can style it later. So please enter your username, email address, and your password. And then we have the actual form part. So here's a field set. And we're going to do the same thing we did in the simple calculator. So we'll have a label for equal. And then we're going to need some fields. And this time I will go ahead and create the constant. So we'll start with the username key. So we want register username key, which is going to be a constant. But since this is in a here doc, what we need to do instead is put it in a variable. So let's go ahead and at the top we'll say register username key is equal to register username key. And I'm actually going to go ahead and put this user name constant in the user class. So I said I was going to do that before. Let me go ahead and do this now. So I'm going to create a PHP file called user, and it has an uppercase U because it's a class definition. So class user, and then I'm going to declare my constant. So const register username key is equal to username. And then if I want to use that in here, then I just say what object it's a constant of, or what class it's a constant in. So user : and I'm also going to require once the user class, which is in the same folder. So now that I have this register username key variable, the way I access this in here is by using curly brackets to mark a variable value and then the value of the variable, like so. So when this page is loaded, when this content is loaded through AJAX, this is going to get replaced by this value, which is the string username. Okay. And then I'll make the label be name. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the input. So here's the input where the user types their name. And this is going to be a text input. Actually, I'll just double quotes. Text name is equal to, and then once again I have register username key and ID is equal to register username key again. And let's start with an empty value. So we'll close that off, and there's our input. And now we're going to do the same thing for email, so I'll copy and paste these two lines. And this is going to be register email key, email key, and email key. And the label will be email. So I'm going to have to create that variable. And then I'll declare that constant in my user class. And then I want the password and the password confirmation. So copy that again. Password key, password key, password key. And finally, confirmation, password confirmation. Okay, so that's a form. And we've closed the field set, we've closed the div. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So I'll reload, and this is going to be sign up. So we have an error. Oh, I haven't declared all these constants yet, so let me go ahead and do that first. Const register password key password and register password confirm key. Password confirm. Okay, that's not why I was getting the error. So uncaught reference error, register is not defined. Actually, it may be. Let's go ahead and try it again. Oh, okay, so that worked. Sign up. Nope. So let's look at the script. Oh, so it's trying to call the register function. And we don't have a register function. So let's make sure this is getting loaded. So I'm going to load the content directly and see what I get. So I'm going to go to share assets includes register content.php. Oh, undefined variable register password key. So, oh, I have to declare these. Register password key user : register password key and register password confirm key, like so. Okay, so now this is working. It's returning the proper JSON object. So we'll reload. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. and we'll hit sign up. Good, so here's our dialog, and we're going to style it a little bit more. So let's start by getting rid of this closed box because we're going to have some buttons there. And closed box, I think we already got rid of that in calculator constants. I'm sorry, calculator content. And so here was the magic for that, right there. So we need to copy that CSS. And reload. Sign up. Good, so no closed box. And then this is actually not too bad, but I'm going to change the width on it. And here's how you set the width and modal. We're actually going to run all this stuff. So let me start by copying all of this stuff. And here's my register dialog. So we'll stick with 600 and modal true. And then this one is going to have a cancel button and an OK button. And the cancel button is going to do the same thing, except it's going to close the register dialog. And then this OK button is going to do the same thing, except it's going to post to assets, actions, do register. And this is looking for input field, so let's see if we have one of those. So we don't. So let's go ahead and look under the register dialog here too. So this is going to gather up all of the input boxes on the register dialog and then serialize them and pass them in. And then when we get this data coming back, let's just console.log it. So we need a do register Ajax script. So new PHP file, do register. And this is going to require once our user.php. So that's going to be, if we're loading the page from here, it's going to be up 1 and then down includes and user. So / includes user.php. So that gives us access to all the same constants that were being used in register content. And will also give us some methods eventually. So what do we want to do when the user registers? Well, they're going to pass in some data, and we want to pass that data over to a user object. But I'm going to, just for testing purposes right now, I'm going to return JSON encode of the $under_post object. And I'll send a header, which is content type application/JSON. So all this is going to do is pass back whatever values it was passed in a JSON object. Should be enough for testing. And let's see what this does. So I'm going to go ahead and reload, sign up. Okay, so I need to make these be blocks. So let's go ahead and add some CSS for that. So I'm going to make label and input the display block. And I think I had that in the simple calculator as well. Okay, and then this width is actually looking kind of wonky here. what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab all the styling information that I had from my calculator. So all of these things are going to be useful, except for input fields and output fields. So not really a lot there. Okay, so now inputs under field sets are going to have margins. Labels will not. So let's do that. Actually, we don't need this at all because we have it already. This really didn't do anything. It just added a little padding and a little margin to the bottom. So that's not going to have a big impact. Okay, so it's a little more spaced out. I think the width is really the problem here. I think adding that was a bad idea. And I could make these boxes bigger so that it fits better, but how long does it need to be for name, email, password, confirm password? Maybe make it a little bit wider. So let's say the maximum number of characters we want to take is, let's say, 60 M's. Okay, that's a little too big. That's by about twice. So let's try 30 M's. Okay, well that's reasonable. So cancel should work, and it does. It just hides the thing. And then OK, I'm going to go ahead and type a name and an email and a password. I'll just type test me. Oh, that has to be a password box. Oops. Let's go ahead and fix that right away. So this is password. And then I'll go ahead and hit OK. And go to the network tab. And then I'll hit OK. All right, so here at console log the return value from my AJAX script. So I passed in these values, and then that got passed back to me as a JSON object. So I'm getting all of my data in the script. Now, let's reload it one more time and make sure that the password is working. And here's a little trick that you can use. So anytime you're on a browser and there's stuff that's filled in and you want to see what it is, if it's a password box, right-click on that, go to Inspect. That will show you the input element. And if you double-click on Type and change that to text, there's a password in clear text. So if you've forgotten your password for any sites, but they have autofill in your browser and you want to know what it is, there you go. So use that for good and not for evil. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. Do I want to update the password? Sure. And meanwhile, in the console, actually, go ahead and say OK. And there's my object.